Hi, you guys. My name is Rachel Bovine, and I am a former chronic pain sufferer. I also own a wellness company called the Poppy and the Olive Branch, and I provide holistic care for individuals. In addition to that, I have founded something called the Chronic Pain Coaching Program to work with individuals who suffer from chronic pain. I am begging you to listen to this video. It is on the opioid epidemic in the United States and also the world. And it's a very, very big topic for me, an area that I'm extremely passionate about. And I want you to hear all of the statistics around the opioid epidemic and to kind of wash out some misconceptions around the use of opioids in the United States. I am going to take you back through the history of opioid development, the use of it, why it works for some and doesn't work for others, and the state that we're really left in as a nation as we try and figure out how to support chronic pain patients. I will be honest with you, I created this video quite a while ago, and I was supposed to speak at a conference on it. That weekend, I was still struggling with chronic pain, and I ended up with the worst pain flare ever and was unable to record it. And so I'm recording it now. I'm recording it because there's a lot of information that has come out now around the statistics and really kind of debunking some misconceptions around the statistics that were shared in the news and shared widespread among providers, patients, family members, loved ones. And it's really been a confusing time for everybody in trying to figure out how to support individuals with chronic pain. I will tell you, it is possible. It is possible to have healing. It is possible to have hope. And the fallout from all of this has been just catastrophic as individuals are committing suicide for lack of hope and being in so much pain. The sudden and really to the prescription use of pain medications for individuals with chronic pain has left people in severe withdrawal, rapid withdrawal, and not a whole lot of support when it comes to managing their life outside of the doctor's office. So I want to talk about that. If you want information, please reach out to me. My email address is rboving@poppyandolivebranch.com. Otherwise, you can find me on Facebook at Poppy and Olive Branch, or you can find a support group that I have for chronic pain individuals, and that is called Stronger Than the Chronic Pain. I'm going to get started here. I just want to say before I get started, I'm not a doctor. I'm a former chronic pain patient and someone who's worked in this area and has worked with chronic pain patients for quite some time now. And I want you to listen to the research, please, as there's so much confusion around this. So just give me some of your time. I am going to pull up the presentation here now and start taking you through some things. I have a lot of notes, so if I look beside me, just know that that's what I'm doing, is trying to make sure that I'm giving you the best information possible. So let me share my screen for you. Let's see. All right, you should be able to now see the first screen, which is understanding and compassion for the opioid epidemic in America. I want to go back to the very start of the opioid epidemic in America and how this all came about so that you can understand why some of the statistics that are in the news and that you've heard about are really confusing and really individuals need the full story. And so that's why I'm bringing this about today, as I've done literally hundreds of hours of research on this very topic to try and make sure that individuals are getting the right information. So this is a slide that I created around the use of opioids in America. What are opioids? So opioids are prescription medications, and they're in a synthetic form. They're derived from either plants or they're completely synthetic. Synthetic means that it's a man-made compound, right? And so there's really no actual plant matter in them. The use of opioids, and when you start to look at the drug compounds of opioids, they really show that they interact with the central nervous system, with the processing in your brain, and they're meant to try and decrease pain by decreasing the ability for you to sense the pain sensors in your brain and to get them to kind of come down a little bit. What makes them dangerous? Well, they bind to neurotransmitters in the brain, and they actually do this better than the chemicals that your own body creates. This is part of the reason why these drugs work so well, but it's also part of the reason why they're so incredibly powerful. This has been studied in addiction treatment centers for a long period of time. But what it also means is that as synthetic compounds are made, more and more side effects come about. You hear about awful side effects from a lot of prescription drugs, and that's because they are synthetic in form. So the way that the brain processes them, it oftentimes leads us to have other symptoms and various offsets of the use of the prescription drugs. So I put together this chart, and the reason why is I want to be able to show you which pain medications are more plant-based and which ones are synthetic compounds. As you move over to the synthetic compounds, the side effects become greater, right? And they become, quite frankly, a little bit, in my opinion, more dangerous. Things like codeine and morphine were some of the very first developed pain drugs that were used. And they were plant-based. As we got more into science and research and started breaking things down more, other drugs started to be created, such as oxycodone. Heroin is something that came out, and everybody knows about the heroin epidemic, but that is more synthetically based. It becomes more dangerous as abuse starts to happen and things like that. And they're much stronger drugs. Fentanyl and methadone are also synthetic compounds. And so you have to be very careful when you're using these types of prescription drugs and medications, as they are truly integrating with your neurotransmitters much better than your natural body's chemicals can be produced. One of the more recent, and as providers are calling them, better drugs that has come out to try and replace oxycodone and some of these other opioids which are on the market and used for pain today, is something called buprenorphine. Buprenorphine is something that is more plant-based and still has synthetic compounds as well, but it's down on that scale. But the thing to understand is this might be classified as a newer and better drug and better option for people with pain, but it is still something that is being derived as trying to fit into those neurotransmitters and your brain's chemicals better than, neurotransmitters better than your brain chemicals can produce. All right, so the next slide that I want to take you through is to really let's talk about these numbers and the statistics that have been shared on the news and in the media. In 2016, approximately 42,000 people died from opiate-induced overdose in the United States. That is the statistic that has been shared on the media. It's been shared widespread across the board when you start to hear about overdose rates. But let's break that down and let's talk about that. So we have seen a drastic increase in overdoses and in deaths that are contributed to opiate use. You can see on this chart that I have from the CDC that it is skyrocketing. But what I want people to understand is the numbers behind all of this. So opioid use and addiction actually, and deaths related to it, actually crosses all socioeconomic statuses, right? So there is no stigma around this that can really be brought. It crosses all racial and gender profiles. It doesn't matter if you are male or female, if you are white, if you're black, if you're rich or if you're poor. The deaths that we are seeing are across the board. But when we start to look at these things, when you break it down, actually 37.5% of opioid overdoses were prescription drug related versus heroin. So what you need to understand is that in those 42,000 people who died from overdose, some of them were heroin related. This number includes all of those things and the use of street drugs. So what I really want to do is make you understand which ones were related to legitimate prescription use by individuals who were being monitored by their providers. It's important to note that about 15,000 deaths annually are due to prescription drug overdose, according to the CDC. So what this equates to is about 37.5% of opioid overdoses shown in this chart, as is listed. In addition, those who were misusing opioids, approximately 60% of all cases included in this 15,000 person number, are misusing prescriptions by obtaining them from family and friends. That means that they're taking them from somebody else who was prescribed those drugs. That is according to the Centers for Disease Control. That means that roughly 9,000 individuals out of that 42,000 individual number that is listed as dying from opioid overdoses were legally obtaining prescription medications, and they were working with their providers, but they lost their lives due to complications from these drugs. When you hear statistics in the media, be sure that you understand the facts around them and the facts around these numbers. So why is this hitting the media? It's hitting the media because opioid death rates are the highest that they have been ever. They went up 4 times between 1999 and 2008. The amount of prescription drugs to hit the streets also went up 4 times. So it wasn't just the amount of prescription drugs in the doctor's office, it was also those that were making it to the streets. Admissions for opioid abuse in treatment centers went up 6 times during that same period. Individuals who were seeking treatment for opioid addiction were about 94% of individuals who sought treatment for opioid addiction admitted that they were choosing to use heroin because it was cheaper and easier to find than prescription opioids. Opiates are now the leading cause of accidental death rates in the United States. This is greater than car accidents, gun accidents, or any other kind of accident. It's astonishing, and it is a huge issue. But make sure that you understand when you're looking at these numbers, the legitimate prescription use that was being overseen by doctors. That was 9,000 individuals out of 42,000 people who died from overdoses. So let's go back and make sure that we understand where these drugs came from and why they were developed. The point of the previous slide is to help individuals understand the true use of prescription opioids, as well as the abuse related to those figures. Now let's talk about why these drugs were developed and what the true challenge is around this class of prescriptions. So when President Gerald Ford was in office, he asked the drug companies to come up with drugs that were good at managing pain. He set out literally a mandate asking for people to come up with better drugs to treat pain. So in the 1970s, Percocet and Vicodin were first released. Dr. Jick and Dr. Porter were 2 doctors that wrote an 11-page article in the New England Journal of Medicine, and they talked about addiction and lack thereof with narcotics. They were really trying to understand the susceptibility to becoming addicted to these types of drugs versus not. And what they found was that the type of profile and individuals who have strong addiction tendencies were the ones who were more apt to become addicted to these. Those individuals who didn't have those addictive tendencies and were using these drugs on an as needed basis didn't become addicted to it. Basically what that means is that it didn't create addiction, right? The addiction profile was there. And the addiction profile is very real. It is something that we need to be aware of and be passionate about when we're prescribing these types of medications and when we're using these types of medications. I won't go into that discussion right now, but I just wanted to state that. So in 1990, there was a push by pain doctors, again, to better treat pain. So what happened was that people started looking at a better drug to try and hit the market. They wanted to try and come up with something that was a better way to treat pain again. So in 1996, OxyContin came on the market. The reason why these drugs were all even created in the first place is that heroin was the first opioid to ever be created. It was developed as a miracle pain reliever in the 1900s, and it was used even for cough suppression. The reason why it was used is that people were looking at the time of the war, right? And there were individuals who were getting hurt really bad, and they needed something. So heroin was actually a legitimate drug that was developed before OxyContin, before Percocet, before Vicodin. And we started to see the rapid increase in the power of heroin being used, and the rapid addiction tendencies that heroin was tied to. That's why President Gerald Ford and others behind him started to request for better pain management drugs. The scary statistic around the use of OxyContin in particular is that when it first came on the market in 1996, there were 15,000 copies of a promotion video that was literally called "I Got My Life Back." It was created by Purdue Pharma, the creator of OxyContin, and it was distributed all over the United States. It was put in physician waiting rooms as an item that they could check out, listed as being an educational item on how they could take their lives back, and how they could use these drugs, and what a great drug OxyContin was. It was literally touted as being a safe option for people who had pain, and was primarily used at the time with cancer patients. Then it started to pick up in being used for more acute pain and other things. So it was literally looked at and was touted for being very safe. When OxyContin came out, it made way for so many other strong and synthetic opioids to be created. It was thought to be safe. It was studied by some pain specialists to be safe for those who had not otherwise shown addiction tendencies in their lives. It was used and highly recommended as being the staple solution for all kinds of pain: acute, chronic, cancer-related pains, other types of chronic illness-related pains. It wasn't until the past few years that anecdotal evidence began to confirm that it was being shown in the statistics to have incredible addiction power and incredible impacts on the brain. It also has incredible risks associated with it. However, these studies and these warnings did not formally get released until this past year, when the CDC came out with a red alert about the use of opioids and opiates being used for those who suffer from chronic pain. What's even scarier is that primary physicians were the highest writers of prescriptions for these drugs. A job description that is responsible for being a generalist in medicine, excellent at everyday conditions, excellent at diagnosing a lot of things. But these individuals are not given enough time, money, resources, and knowledge to know all of the grave details behind pain management. They just don't have enough time with the patients. They don't have enough time to be able to know the ins and the outs of chronic pain. And they were doing their very best as they were told to prescribe these drugs. It wasn't their fault. It's not their fault. The doctors want to help. Yet, these providers were being pushed heavily to treat pain. It was their mandate to treat pain. And their resource was opioids. So from 2007 to 2012, the rate of opioid prescribing steadily increased. The prescribing rates are the highest among these pain management specialists and in surgery at 49 and 37%. And physical medicine and rehabilitation makes up 36% of all prescriptions that were being written. However, PCPs and primary doctors accounted for about half of the prescriptions that were being written for opioids. Long-term opioid use should only be used for individuals who have a fatal disease like cancer, who don't have a long life expectancy like those who are aging and dealing with very extensive pain issues. They're not intended to be something that is used on a day-to-day basis. And it starts to really alter things in the brain and become very, very complicated when it's being used every single day. Doctors were doing what they were taught to do. But now what has been created is that there's a huge stigma that started to come out around drug seeking, around looking for these opioids, around trying to get relief from pain that doctors had to assess to figure out if it was actually very severe or what the pain was really like. Let's talk about the real issue here. The real issue around the use of opioids in the United States stems from the real influx around chronic pain. Nearly 100 million Americans suffer with chronic pain. This is defined as pain that lasts for more than 3 months' time and doesn't go away. There is a scary correlation between the opioid epidemic and the increase in chronic pain in the United States. Both of these have become the number one killer of individuals and two major health factors. First of all, it is the leading opioid overdoses is the leading cause of accidental deaths. Chronic pain is now the leading condition as listed by the CDC in the United States. It exceeds heart disease, it exceeds diabetes, it exceeds stroke, it exceeds cancers. Yet that's not being talked about as the true underlying issue of the use of opioids, the use of pain medications. And what we really need to do is try and figure out where this pain epidemic is stemming from. 100 million Americans, again, suffer with chronic pain. This equates to nearly 10 times those who develop cancer. It is more than 9 times the amount of those who have heart issues. And it is more than 14 times those individuals who have strokes. All of these were previously thought of as being the biggest issues and biggest disease factors in our country. This is a big problem. And the message couldn't be clearer. The use of these drugs to treat pain isn't much farther along than it was a century ago when we were using heroin to treat pain. Beyond the jaw-dropping clash that exists between the increase in chronic pain and the increase in opioid deaths, it is important to understand that all opioids have the ability to change the body's ability to respond to pain. They can actually create pain. So opioid users are facing really, really tough obstacles. Right now, we are looking at a very strange time. We have more people in pain, yet we are back in the state of less resources to be able to help people fight their pain. Pain providers and those who specialize in pain management, their offices are full right now as they're dealing with trying to help people deal with their pain, cope with their pain, heal from their pain. Lawmakers, policyholders, and media are looking at the death rates stating that this is the epidemic. Yet the epidemic also includes the fact that treatment options for severe pain still have room for improvement. As stated earlier, more and more people have pain. We know that the brain and the central nervous system can get stuck in the way that it perceives and in the way that it processes pain, leading to chronic pain that lasts longer after an injury's occurred. It lasts longer than the acute pain. It develops scar tissue. It comes from post-surgical issues. It comes from trauma. It comes from the lack of the brain's ability to rewrite itself and recover from those high pain signals firing. There are structural injuries that can cause chronic pain, nerve injuries that can cause chronic pain. These are the things that we should be focused on. Long-term use of opioids, we know now, can actually cause pain. There's something called hypersensitization or opioid-induced hyperanalgesia. That is something that happens when long-term use of opioids actually causes your body to be more sensitive to the pain receptors, has the pain receptors firing even higher, so that you could be using opioids to try and manage your pain, but you just have to use more and more and more to try and cover up the pain. We are at the one of the things that we need to understand about chronic pain is that the very same area that the brain processes chronic pain is also where it processes stress and also where it processes emotions. When a person is suffering from chronic pain and they become stressed, their body actually interprets more pain signals. It makes the pain worse. When people who have chronic pain have something emotional happen to them, sometimes they can end up with worse pain or a pain flare around this. It's an overactive part of the brain. It's the same area that the brain processes stress and emotions. That's why it becomes such a vicious cycle for the person going through chronic pain. You start out with pain. You try and treat the pain. You use medications. It gives you stress, anxiety around the use of medications. That brings about more pain. You might have a good day and you go and you exert yourself, where one person who exerts themselves might feel sore the next day or a little achy and stiff. The chronic pain person actually feels a tremendous amount of pain, much more pain than you or I would be feeling if we were to go and exert ourselves in a physical form for a period of time. So then they end up in bed again. They end up feeling bad about themselves. They feel frustrated with the pain, not understanding why they can't have a good day and why they have to pay for it the next if they do. That begets more pain. And it's a vicious long-term cycle that happens because of the difficulty in where pain sensors exist in the brain. So the pressure is on, right? Again, I'm going to say this. It is not the fault of providers. It is not the fault of anyone. It is not the fault of patients for the state that we're in the United States. This epidemic is truly, truly catastrophic. There are the increased cost of prescriptions around these pain drugs. Shortly after the CDC and the FDA came out with this red alert, the prescription or the cost around prescriptions skyrocketed as they were trying to deter the patient from going and getting their prescriptions. Insurance companies are behind this. States are mandating this. Minnesota came out with a mandate right after the CDC came out with their alert saying that they were raising taxes around prescriptions. But here's the problem. The problem is that the individual who is using pain medication as prescribed by their doctors was suddenly told that they needed to pay more for their drugs that were actually being used and touted as being able to help them. Then they were told that they weren't going to be prescribed these drugs anymore. That threw everybody into a rapid position of withdrawal. Individuals who, some of them, may have had addiction issues, but the vast majority of those individuals didn't have addiction tendencies. What happened was they were being told to use these for a long period of time to help manage their pain. So when you suddenly stop a drug that is so powerful, it is going to put you into withdrawal. You are going to have to go through some very uncomfortable, very painful side effects of even coming off from these medications. What next? These people are on their own, left to their own devices to try and figure out how to get themselves off of pain medication. And they're also going in their head, what now? How am I going to manage my pain? How am I going to live with this? They have been going to the ERs to try and get assistance and get help because their pain flares and they don't know where else to go. And the ERs turn them away because they're not able to prescribe these drugs anymore. There's a stigma around the use of this, right? Where people will look and say, well, they're drug seekers. They're looking for pain medication. We can't measure what kind of pain that they're in. There's a stigma around, is chronic pain a mental health condition? I am here to tell you, no, it is not. Does it create depression? Yeah. When you're in that much pain, that'll make you sad every single day of your life being in that much pain. It would make anyone sad. But the stigma exists around all of this, right? And around individuals who are simply trying to find help. They have more stress around their care plan and their treatment plan. Let me give you another fun fact that not a lot of people know. Do you know that when you are prescribed pain medications by doctors, you actually have to sign a form that says that if you are pulled over in your car using pain medications, that it could be a felony? That if you are in a car accident and you had used an opioid, that your insurance company is going to find you guilty no matter what, or at fault for that car accident. People are trying to live their lives. They're trying to contribute to society. They're trying to do the best to maintain their everyday. But when you add that stress and that pressure on them as they're trying to get to work, they're trying to drop their kids off at daycare, they're trying to do the things that they need to do to be able to pay for their treatment, to be able to pay for their care, and then you add in the stress and anxiety around driving, around how people are going to perceive them, around what the media is saying around them, around the fear of taking medications, and then the fear of not knowing what to do when the medications are gone, and the fear of withdrawal. All that's doing is exacerbating all of the symptoms of pain. So let me tell you something. There is hope, but what we need is a full realization around what's actually going on. Compassion, support, and a new beginning is what we need. Chronic pain sufferers are going through an awful amount of financial stress, needing the ability to be able to pay for their support, pay for the care that they need. They need stress reduction in the brain. They need the ability to feel like they are contributing members of society. They need to feel like they are good people, and they are. They need to be able to do social activities and know that they're not being judged by somebody sitting next to them. I'm asking you to please break the stigma. I actually reached out to lawmakers after the CDC alert came out. I reached out to my local state government officials and to federal officials. And I left messages trying to ask, what's next? Now, what do we do for the individuals who are suddenly going through withdrawal, who don't know where to turn, who are being judged in the news saying that the vast majority of people are overdosing because of opioid use and abuse, and not really being supported in looking at the numbers, understanding the numbers, being able to have those conversations with their providers unjudged. I didn't get an answer back. I didn't get one phone call. There are individuals who do need treatment support around the powerful, powerful effects of these drugs. They are highly addictive. There is that class of individuals who also doesn't need to be judged, but need treatment care, need rehabilitation. And there are other people who need the support of being able to taper off from these medications and find alternative ways to manage their pain. One thing that I have done is I've created a chronic pain coaching program for individuals who are suffering with chronic pain to try and help them be able to cope with and manage their life outside of the doctor's office, to be able to coordinate their care, to get tips on how to do so, to be able to work through some of those emotional things that really hound them around the stigmas related to chronic pain, to give them research and understanding around chronic pain, why it's happening, because it's so confusing, to be able to work with their loved ones and bring understanding to the caregivers and to the support that they need. And also to look at ways that really relate to them in terms of healing, alternative therapies that can help them because it resonates with them and who they are as a person. Those are all things that we look at on an individualized basis to try and provide support and healing for people going through chronic pain so that they can better work with their practitioners and their doctors. It is not meant to replace doctors. They have their place and they are experts. But it also provides an opportunity for them to work one-on-one with somebody who looks at their total life and tries to help them make some sense out of things and gain some balance and quiet those pain signals and deal with the stress and the emotions around it, and helps to rewrite the pain signals through the mind-body connection, through neuroplasticity, and through many more types of approaches. What I'm asking you is, if you know of someone who suffers with chronic pain, or you are the person suffering from chronic pain, and you want to talk about this and you want more resources, there's a couple of ways that you can reach out to me if you'd like to. Again, my email address is rboeving@poppyandolivebranch.com. Please feel free to email me. I've also created an online group on Facebook to try and support individuals and give them this information. And that is called Stronger Than the Chronic Pain. You can just put it into the search bar on Facebook and it will pop up. My company is also called The Poppy and the Olive Branch. Find me, reach out to me, give me a message. I am telling you, everybody needs to work together. Providers need to work together. Lawmakers need to work together. Caregivers need to work together. Patients need to work together. We all need to work together to find the solution to chronic pain, which is a real epidemic that's taking place in our society. Hang in there, you guys. There are people out there who care about you and want to support you. Trust me, I've been there. It is a living hell, and I know it. So please know that there are people rooting for you and that there is hope. I want to talk with providers. I want to talk with policymakers. I want to talk with individuals who are going through this. We need a solution. Lots of love to you guys. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that it helped. Take care. Bye.